And welcome back. In this video, we're going to cover pilot qualifications. It's not going to be a really long video because there are only a few things you need to know, like private qualifications, privileges and limitations, medical certificates, and then there is something known as basic med. We're going to get to that. And then the last thing is going to be proficiency versus currency. All right, let's get to it. So these are my notes. I'm going to explain everything, but in a way that you guys can memorize them easily. So the first thing is student pilot license. Why do you need a student pilot license? You need it because in order to build your hours to get a private, you cannot just go out and fly randomly. You need to be having a license which says that you are legal to fly with an instructor. So with a student pilot license, you can log flight hours. You can go solo after receiving the desired requirements. In your training, if you guys go for a Part 141 school, in your training, they're going to tell you that this is the amount of hours that you need to fly. And it's going to include a specific number of hours for solo as well. You can go solo cross country only if endorsed by the CFI. So what is an endorsement? The CFI is gonna write in your logbook that the student has received the training required for the solo. Easy. Coming to the limitations, cannot carry passengers. This is the reason why we are trying to get a private pilot so that we can carry passengers. Cannot carry passengers for compensation or hire. Okay. Restricted airspaces until endorsed by the CFI. So there are some airspaces which you cannot go to if you're not a private pilot. We're gonna get to that in airspaces, but for now, it's just you need to know that Bravo is one of those airspaces that you cannot enter into without having a private pilot license. Weather visibility limitations. We'll get to that. Only day VFR until endorsed by the CFI. What does it mean? So VFR means visual flying rules, and you can only fly visual flight in day until you're endorsed by the CFI. Got it? Easy. I don't think anyone is gonna ask you about student pilot limitations because when you go into a state check or a check ride, you have to act as if you're already a private pilot. Coming to private pilot limitations, you need to remember the FAA number, which is 6113. Remember this. Coming to the privileges, can act as a PIC. What is a PIC? Pilot in command. So basically, you're going to be the sole manipulator of the aircraft. Easy. Can carry passengers. Ooh, this is why we're getting the license, right? You can carry passengers. Cost sharing equally, or we call it pro rata share. What does this mean? So I'll give you an example. For example, you decide that you're gonna take your friend on a flight and he wants to pay. You cannot do that, right? You cannot get paid as a private pilot. But what can you do? You can pay for half of the expenses and your friend can pay half. But these expenses can only be the operating cost of the aircraft. For example, the ramp charges, the fuel, the landing charges, etc. So there was a situation in my check ride that the DPE gave me was you and your friend, you go for a flight and he wants to pay you. You tell him that you cannot pay me, but we can split the cost. And your friend was like, rather than doing that, you pay for the flight, I'll pay for your dinner. Can you do that? The answer is no. Why? Because what pro rata share says, it needs to be operating expenses. If you're getting compensated outside of the airport, that is not legal. Coming to fly across country at night. As a private pilot, there are going to be regulations which will ask you to go and do a cross country at night. It's going to be a requirement. Access to airspaces, basically, Bravo. Now, as a private pilot, you can enter Bravo airspaces, but there are also a limitation. That's no one's going to tell you about that limitation, but you need to know that. There are some Bravo airspaces that even as a private pilot, you cannot go. Look it up in FAA and you're going to find it. Fly in VFR conditions, okay, can participate in non-commercial flights. What does non-commercial flight mean? You carry passengers, okay, you're not getting compensated, okay. But also, you can do search and rescue flights. You can do demonstrative flights. Of course, you need like 200 hours of experience for demonstrative flights. You can tow a glider as a private pilot. You need 100 hours and you need training to tow a glider. Coming to the limitations. Okay, biannual inspection. You need to do a biannual inspection. So what does biannual mean? Annual means 12 months, bi 24 months. So every 24 months, you need to get this inspection done, which includes at least 1 hour of ground and 1 hour of flight with a CFI, CFII, a DPE, anyone. So a funny thing, my DPE, he asked me, if we go for a flight now, is they gonna count as a flight review? And I was like, yeah. And he asked me why. I didn't know the answer to that. But basically, what the FARM says, a biannual inspection can be done by any CFI, any CFII, or a DPE. If you're building up to a license, if you're going for a check ride, if you're getting add-on or anything, that is going to count as a biannual inspection. Okay. This is also called as a flight review. Cannot carry passengers for compensation or hire. We know that. Can only fly VFR. Of course, you don't have an instrument rating. Aircraft limitations, we'll get to that. Should be current to carry passengers. What does this current mean? That is our next topic. No international flights, of course. Should at least have a class 3 medical. Class 3. Okay, so we have class 1, class 2, class 3. As a private pilot, you only need this class 3 medical, but there are some exceptions, and we'll get to that. Private pilot requirements. No one is going to ask you this ever, but it's good that you know. You need to be at least 17 years of age, okay? Need to read, write, and speak English fluently, okay? Need a class 3 medical. We just read about that. At least 20 hours of flight instruction, 10 hours solo, one solo cross country, 150 with full stop. What does this mean? So basically, the requirement is 40 hours. Out of these 40, 20 have to be dual, which means with your instructor. You need at least 10 hours of solo. You need one solo cross country, and also you need like 3 hours of cross country time. Knowledge test, practical test. So, knowledge test is basically your written. You need at least 70. Got it? Easy. No one's gonna ever ask you. PIC VFR rules. In order to act as a PIC, the visibility requirement is 3 statute miles of visibility, 2000 feet horizontal, which means the horizontal distance between you and the ceilings should be at least 2000 feet, 1000 above, 500 below. If you are above the clouds, you need to be at least 1000 feet above them. But if you're below them, 500 is fine. Coming to proficiency, currency, and recency. So a lot of people they get confused between these three. But if you understand the meaning of them, it's going to be really simple. We're going to leave proficiency for now. I'm going to come to currency. What is currency? For someone, it might be dollars. For someone, it might be dirhams, yen, anything. But in aviation, currency means if you are legal to fly the aircraft, if you have the specific endorsements, if you have like everything that you need. So currency it basically means that you're legal to fly the aircraft. If you have specific endorsements, if you have the requirements to fly the aircraft. Coming to recency is just it doesn't have a time period. It means how recent you are. For example, you had your last flight like 45 days ago, and today you want to take your friends for a flight. Can you do that? Yes, you can. But will you do that? That's the question. I would say no. Rather take an instructor for like 30 minutes, come back, and then take them. Coming to proficiency. Okay. Basically means how proficient you are. So the requirement is within the preceding 90 days. You need to have at least 3 takeoffs and 3 landings in day. But if you're flying at night, you need these 3 takeoffs and landings, and they have to be a full stop. It doesn't have to be a full stop taxi back. It just have to be a full stop. Come on the runway, you do a stop, and then you do a go.